Om Namo Bhagavate भगवती शारदा देवी ओम ओम नमो भगवती शारदा देवी ओम नमो भगवती शारदा देवी ओम ओम नमो भगवती शारदा देवी ओम नमो भगवते रामकृष्णाय ओम नमो भगवती शारदा देवी ओम श्री रामकृष्ण भगवान की जय।
पार्वती पालना पारवारवर परम भाग्य भवचरणा भक्तजन सुमुख प्रणव विनायक पवन परिमल चरणा पार्वती पालना पार्वती पालना पारवारवर परम भाग्य भवचरणा भक्तजन सुमुख प्रणव विनायक भक्तजन सुमुख प्रणव विनायक पावन परिमल चरणा पावन परिमल चरणा प्रभु गणपते परिपूर्ण वाळरुळ्वाये प्रभु गणपते परिपूर्ण वाळरुळ्वाये प्रभु गणपति 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 आदिमूल गणनाद गजानन अद्भुत तवल स्वरूप अद्भुत तवल स्वरूप देव देव जय विजय विनायक देव देव जय विजय विनायक देव देव जय विजय विनायक सन्मय पर शिव देवा सन्मय पर शिव देवा प्रभु गणपते परिपूर्ण वाळरुळ्वाये प्रभु गणपते 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 साधु वणंगी तुदी पाடி ஆடி உந்தன் சொன்னதே சரணடைந்தோமே சாது வணங்கி துதி பாடி ஆடி உந்தன் சொன்னதே சரணடைந்தோமே சாத சிற்ற சௌபாக்கியும் யாவையும் சாத சிற்ற சௌபாக்கியும் யாவையும் शंकरुल सद्गुरु नीये शंकरुल सद्गुरु नीये प्रभु गणपते परिपूर्ण वाळरुळ्वाये प्रभु गणपते 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 தேடி தேடி எங்கோ ஓடுகின்றான் உன்னை தேடி கண்டு கொள்ளலாமே தேடி தேடி எங்கோ ஓடுகின்றான் உன்னை தேடி கண்டு கொள்ள गणेशाय नमो ओम जय जय गणेशाय नमो ओम 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 प्रभु गणपते परिपूर्ण वाळरुள்வாயே प्रभु गणपते गणपते गणपते
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
जग में साचो तेरो नाम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
तू ही माता तू ही पिता है
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 तू ही तो है राधा का श्याम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
तू अंतर्यामी सबका स्वामी
तू अंतर्यामी सबका स्वामी
तू अंतर्यामी सबका स्वामी
तू अंतर्यामी सबका स्वामी
तेरे चरणों में चारों धाम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
तू ही बिगाड़े तू ही सवारे
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 इस जग के सारे काम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
तू जगदाता विश्व विधाता
जगदाता विश्वविधाता
तू जगदाता विश्वविधाता
तू जगदाता विश्वविधाता
तू ही सुबह तू ही शाम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम
हे राम हे राम ॐ श्री राम कृष्ण भगवान की जय पवन सुत हनुमान की जय श्री अम्बे अम्बे मात की जय श्री सियावर रामचंद्र की जय।
भोरा रे शिवजी मारे मंदिरिये आज पधारो ना। भोरा रे शिवजी मारे मंदिरिये आज पधारो ना। भोरा रे शिवजी मारे मंदिरिये आज पधारो ना। मारे मंदिरिये आज पधारो ना। भोरा रे शिवजी मारे मंदिरिये आज पधारो ना। ओम हरा ओम पकड़िले जो हाथ मारो एक तुम्हारो साथ। તમારો ધ્યાન
દેવીના પત્ર તમને ચડાવો હૃદયમાં તમારો ધ્યાન
ઓમ હર ઓમ આરતી મારી અંતર ધરજો
આરતી મારી અંતર ધરજો આરતી મારી અંતર ધરજો રે ભોળા ભગવાન આજ પધારો નાથ ઓમ હર ઓમ આરતી મારી અંતર ધરજો આરતી મારી અંતર ધરજો રે ભોળા ભગવાન આજ પધારો
નાથ વાલા જ પધારો નાથ
ભલા આજ પધારો નાથ
વાલા જ પધારો નાથ
ભલા આજ પધારો નાથ
ભોરા રે શિવજી મારે મંદિરે આજ પધારો નાથ
ભોરા રે શિવજી મારે મંદિરે આજ પધારો નાથ
ઓમ શ્રી રામ કૃષ્ણ ભગવાન કી જય
ॐ ऐं सर्वदेवदेवी स्वरूपाय श्रीरामकृष्णाय नमः. Om Namo Narayanaya, dear sisters, brothers and loving children. Today we shall read from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The chapter is With the Devotees at Dakshineshwar. The date, Friday, 15th June 1883. It was a holiday on account of the Hindu festival of Dasera. Many devotees came to visit Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineshwar. They sat on the floor of the master's room. A devotee asked the master, "Sir, can one realize God while leading the life of a householder?" Sri Ramakrishna smiled and said, "Why not? Live in the world like a mudfish. The mudfish lives in the mud but is never stained. Or live in the world like a lotus flower, which has its roots in the mud, but the beautiful flower is untainted." The flower is not tainted. Do all your duties in the world, fixing your mind on God. But this is extremely difficult. So Sri Ramakrishna lovingly encourages us and gives us hope even though we are living in the world. He guides and gives us practical advice using two perfect examples. One is the mudfish, which lives in the mud but is not stained by the mud. It is clean. So we too must live in the world but not be worldly. Next is the lotus flower, which has its roots in the muddy waters, but the beautiful flower is high above the water. Similarly, we must have our thoughts in noble and positive ideas so that we do not become entangled in the world. Once the master had said, "The boat must be on the water, but the water should not be in the boat, otherwise it will sink." So master advises us to do our duties but give our hearts to God. The master continues, "You have to spend a few days in solitude. If you but touch the granny, you are safe. After attaining divine love in solitude, one may live in the world as well." Master says to Rakhal's father, Rakhal was later Swami Brahmananda, "That is why I ask the youngsters to stay with me, for they will develop love of God by staying here for a few days. After that, they can very well lead the life of a householder. So when Master says touching the granny, Master refers to the game of hide and seek. Whoever touches the granny cannot be caught because he is then saved. If we first cultivate love for God, our minds will become strong and we will not get enmeshed in the world. Living in solitude means make time to practice spiritual disciplines and deepen our faith in God. Do not allow the pairs of opposites like good and bad, joy and sorrow to upset us. Then we can make steady progress. Master also mentions that all the young disciples are very blessed to live with the Master. They learned how to love God and live carefully in different situations of life. A devotee asked, if God is responsible for everything, then why should people speak of good and evil, virtue and vice? One commits sin also by the will of God, isn't that so? Master replies, there is no doubt that virtue and vice exist in the world, but God is not attached to them. There may be good and bad smells in the air, but the air is not attached to them. The very nature of God's creation is that good and evil, righteousness and unrighteousness will always exist in the world. Among the trees in the garden, one finds sweet mangoes, jackfruit and hog plum too. Haven't you noticed that even rough men are needed? Suppose there are unruly tenants on an estate, then the landlord must send a ruffian to control them. So now the Master gives us the advantages of the pairs of opposites. If we have only daylight, for example, if we have only daylight, we will take it for granted and not appreciate it. Since we have darkness, we value and love the daylight. The conversation now turned to the life of householders. The Master to the devotees, you see, by leading a householder's life, a man dissipates his mental powers. This is because the man has so many duties to attend to. The two obstacles to spiritual life are lust and gold. These refer to greed and wanting all the time or not being satisfied. The devotees listened to these words in deep silence. The Master said, it is not only lust that one should be afraid of while living in the world, there is also anger. Anger arises when obstacles are placed in the way of desire. Shri Krishna Bhagwan expresses the same thought in the Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 3, verse 39, Lord Krishna says, knowledge is covered by this insatiable fire of desire, the constant enemy of the wise. We can also refer to chapter 2, verses 60 to 64. These verses explain the ill effects of wrong desires and anger. Anger is never good. As Shri Krishna says, triple is the gateway to hell: lust, anger and greed. And amazingly now, the Master too is warning us about these vices. So chapter 2 verses 60 to 64 give us the great benefits of being able to control our minds. Our gurus always advise us to be the master of our minds and senses, and they guide us in the right direction. Master now advises, a person living in the world should hiss, but he should not pour out his venom. He must not actually injure others, but he must make a show of anger to protect himself from enemies. Otherwise, they will injure him. Our Master knows the human mind very well and guides householders carefully. He does not want us to be weak or meek. If we see anything going wrong, we cannot be passive and say, I am not supposed to be angry. We must express our displeasure to help improve the situation. For example, if your child or friend misbehaves, it is your duty to correct them without harming them. A devotee says, I find it extremely difficult for a householder to realize God. How few people can lead the life you prescribe for them. I haven't found any. Master, why should that be so? I have heard of a deputy magistrate named Pratap Singh. He is a great man. He has many virtues, compassion and devotion to God. He meditates on God. Once he sent for me. Certainly there are people like him. The practice of discipline is absolutely necessary. Why shouldn't a man succeed if he practices sadhana? Now here sadhana refers to spiritual practices like repeating God's name, meditating, reading from the scriptures, and praying regularly. But he doesn't have to work hard, says Master, if he has real faith in the words of his Guru. And the Master now gives us an example. Once, Vyasa was about to cross the river Yamuna when the gopis also arrived there wishing to go to the other side. But no ferry boat was in sight. The gopis said to sage Vyasa, Revered sir, what shall we do now? Don't worry, said Vyasa, I will take you across. But I am very hungry. Have you anything for me to eat? The gopis had plenty of milk, cream and butter with them. Sage Vyasa ate all of it. Then the gopis asked, Well, sir, what about crossing the river? Vyasa stood on the bank of the Yamuna and said, O Yamuna, if I have not eaten anything today, then may your waters part, so that we may all walk to the other side. No sooner did the sage utter these words than the waters of the Yamuna parted. The gopis were speechless with wonder. He ate so much just now, they said to themselves, and he says, if I have not eaten anything today. Vyasa had the firm conviction, says the Master, that it was not he who had eaten, but the Lord Narayana who dwelt in his heart had partaken of the food. There is also a wonderful incident in the Master's life. Once, when Master and his young disciples were returning from Kolkata by boat, all of them felt hungry, but they did not say anything. As they passed a particular area, the Master said, I am hungry. Please purchase some sweets from a store in this area. All of them were pleased and thought, the Master knows that we are hungry, so we will have something to eat. But surprisingly, when the packet of sweets was brought, the Master slowly ate all of it without sharing it with anyone. The devotees were flabbergasted when they themselves felt full. They felt as if they had eaten a full meal. So, when God in Master's heart was satisfied, God in the hearts of all the devotees felt full and content. Our revered Guruji used to tell us, when you are eating, feel that you are feeding God in you. Therefore, we are taught to sit calmly, pray, and then eat. Do not rush or watch TV, or walk around while eating. These are wonderful lessons that we can try to practice in order to progress. Then gradually, consciously, we try to feel the living presence of God. When we make a habit of reminding ourselves that God is seated in our hearts, we gradually feel that presence. This gives us inner strength and the assurance that we are not alone. Prayer saves us from calamities and allows us to win God's grace. May we practice these good habits and attain peace of mind. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
भयभञ्जन पुरुष निरञ्जन रतिपति गञ्जनकारी यति जन रञ्जन मनोमद खण्डन यति जन रञ्जन मनोमद खण्डन जय भव वन्दन हारी जय भव वन्दन सुरदल नायक जय जय विश्वविधाता चिर शुभ साधक मतिमल पावक चिर शुभ साधक मतिमल पावक जय चित संशय त्राता जय चित संशय त्राता सुर नर वंदन विजर विवंदन चित मन नंदन कारी रिपु जय मंथन जय भवतारण रिपु जय मंथन जय भवतारण स्थल जल भूधर धारी स्थल जल भूधर धारी शमदम मंदन अभय निकेतन जय जय मंगलदाता जय सुख सागर नटवर नागर जय सुख सागर नटवर नागर जय शरणागत पाता जय शरणागत पाता ब्रह्मतम भास्कर जय परमेश्वर सुखकर सुंदर भाषा अचल सनातन जय भव पावन अचल सनातन जय भव पावन जय विजयी अविनाशी जय विजयी अविनाशी भक्त कवि मोहन वरतनु धारण जय हरि कीर्तन भोला गद गद भाषण चित मन तोषण गद गद भाषण चित मन तोषण धल धल नर्तन लीला धल धल नर्तन लीला मति गति वर्धन कलिमल मर्दन विषय विराग प्रसारी जल चित चेतक भव जल भेलक जल चित चेतक भव जल भेलक जय नर मानस चारी जय नर मानस चारी जय पुरुषोत्तम अनुपम संयम जय जय अंतर्यामी हर तर साधन नर दुख वारण हर तर साधन नर दुख वारण जय राम
Om Namo Narayanaya, dear sisters and brothers. Let us try to concentrate our minds on the luminous form of God seated in our hearts. Make a habit of sitting quietly for a few moments every day, and the restless mind will become calm. Sri Ramakrishna says, "Do not let worldly thoughts and anxieties disturb your mind. Do everything that is necessary at the proper time, and let your mind always think of God." May God fill us with love and peace, so that we can share these with those whom we meet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरि ओम तत्सत्।
जय श्री गुरु महाराज की
जय।
महामाई की
जय।
स्वामी जी महाराज की
जय।
गंगा मात की
जय।
महावीर स्वामी जी की
जय।
सर्व ऋषि मुनीन की
जय। पार्वती पतये हर हर महादेव की जय। ओम नमो नारायणाय।
Om Namo Narayanaya, dear devotees. Last week we discussed the significance of the incarnations of God and great rishis. We also spoke about the importance of the Vedas. We study about all of these so that we can emulate their virtuous qualities and try to manifest the divine power of God that is in us also. We may say that since incarnations are God, it was easy for them to achieve what they did. But God, in the form of the Atman, is in us too. When we hear about our innate divinity from a young age, we feel encouraged to follow the inspiring examples of Sri Ram, Sri Krishna, and others. There are also many interesting stories of the child devotees of God. One was Prahlad, the son of a wicked demon king, Hiranyakashipu. Hiranya did not believe that God was almighty. He thought that there was no one as powerful as he. His young son, Prahlad, loved Lord Vishnu, and this angered Hiranya. Prahlad's teachers tried to convince him not to revere the Lord, but Prahlad knew the difference between right and wrong, and could not abandon his devotion to God. Therefore, Hiranya tormented his son. His servants rolled him down a mountain. They tried to poison him, burn him, drown him, and bury him. But Prahlad was unharmed. He continued to chant God's holy name, and God always saved and protected him each time. Prahlad had complete faith in and love for God. Eventually, Hiranya asked Prahlad, "Where is your God?" Prahlad simply replied, "He is everywhere." Hiranya again inquired, "Is your God in this pillar?" Saying so, he struck the pillar hard. Amazingly, Lord Vishnu emerged from the pillar. The Lord took the form of Narasimha, which is half man, half lion. Narasimha destroyed the cruel king Hiranya and blessed young Prahlad. We constantly see the victory of virtue against vice. This encourages us to follow the path of Dharma. Another child devotee is Sambandar, whose parents were devotees of Lord Shiva. One day, Sambandar's father took him to a temple of Lord Shiva. He left the child on the steps to have a bath before entering the temple. After some time, Sambandar began to cry, but his father did not hear him. Lord Shiva and Mother Parvati heard the child cry. They came and gave him some milk from a golden cup. Lord Shiva and Mother Parvati played with Sambandar and blessed him with divine wisdom. When Sambandar's father returned, he asked his son who gave him the milk. Sambandar pointed to the images of Lord Shiva and Mother Parvati and began to sing inspiring hymns to them. Sambandar's songs are full of wisdom and are sung even today. God hears our cries and answers our prayers. He comes to us to alleviate our sufferings, often in ways that we do not recognize. We should always pray to God, who saves us from many difficult situations. In good and bad times, we must remember God loves us, His devotees. The next story describes the glory of Mahashivaratri. Once a hunter had to spend the night in a dark forest. He had hunted all day, but did not get much prey. When it grew dark, he climbed a tree, seeking safety from the wild animals of the forest. He thought that he would rest, but was so afraid that if he closed his eyes, he would be attacked. He began to pluck leaves from the tree and drop them on the ground to pass the time and keep awake. Unknown to him, a shivling, a sacred symbol of Lord Shiva, was just below him. He also did not realize that he was plucking bilwa leaves and offering them onto the shivling. That night happened to be Mahashivaratri, the night when Hindus worship Lord Shiva. The hunter was unaware of all these facts and worshipped Lord Shiva throughout that holy night. The great Lord blessed him, and in the morning he safely found his way out of the forest. God sees all the good that we do, even though we are not aware of it. God makes everything suitable for His devotees. Have faith in God, who is our protector and Savior. Another interesting story related to Mahashivaratri is the churning of the ocean. During the churning of the milky ocean by the gods and demons, many things emerged. The celestial elephant and horse, the parijata tree, and the amrit, or divine nectar. Suddenly, terrible poison surfaced. It threatened to destroy the world. Lord Shiva, without hesitation, drank this poison to save and protect the world. Mother Parvati became worried and quickly stopped the Lord from swallowing the poison by pressing his throat. The poison remained in the throat, making Lord Shiva's neck blue. Thus, Lord Shiva is called Nilakanta, the blue-throated one. This story teaches us that sometimes our efforts produce both good and bad results. Lord Shiva shows us that bravery, faith, and perseverance can transform or divert the bad into good if we have good intentions. When we do not mean harm to anyone, God helps us. The concept of good and bad is in all of creation. There are external forces of evil, as well as the mental turmoil we experience. Hinduism has a glorious festival to remind us what we must practice. Virtues like truthfulness, kindness, and compassion. Deepavali or Diwali celebrates the victory of light over darkness, good over evil. Homes are thoroughly spring-cleaned to prepare for this sacred occasion. Lamps are lit and we spend quality time with family and friends. Fireworks are burst to express joy, and delicious sweetmeats are distributed to family and friends. It is motivating to know that good triumphs over evil. Sri Ram, who destroyed Ravan, returned to Ayodhya after 14 years of exile. Sri Krishna, too, killed the demon Narakasur, who was harassing everyone. These victories prove that virtues always triumph over vices. Often we do not see the results immediately. We must persevere.